Hello and welcome to the Homeless Consultant channel. My name is Paul B. I am the Homeless Consultant. And my recent videos have been pretty heavy and pretty dark. So I thought I would intersperse something a little more happy here. This is something I've kind of had on my mind for a while. And what it is a video that is going to introduce people who are not musicians in particular, or at least not drummers. I'm going to introduce you to what drummers actually do. In other words, you might call it drummer appreciation. And hopefully by the end of this video, when you listen to music, that have drummers in it, you're going to have a much better appreciation for what it is that they're doing back there. Because I've played about 45 years. I've played drums, and it's more than just Animal on the Muppet Show. It's more than just that. Sometimes the 90s weren't very good to rock and roll, actually. Now that I think of it. Speaking of which, the first rule. I'm wearing my I don't know if you can see my ADJ shirt here, which has nothing to do with me. This is DJ stuff, but hey, it's the shirt I have. I wanted a black shirt so you could see the sticks behind me. The first rule of rock and roll, in my experience, this is the first rule of rock and roll, is that whenever you buy a rock and roll branded shirt, it will always be 2 sizes smaller than it says it is. So if you buy an extra large shirt, like I did, it will say XL on it, but it'll actually be a medium, and it will show your belly and every I guess in a way it's a good thing. If it's real tight around your thin muscles, it'll make you look more muscular or something. I don't know. The first rule of rock and roll. Alright, so preliminaries. I've got the sun in my eyes. I'm trying to block it out with a paper towel here. I've got my fan on because it's really, really hot, even though it's only 7 in the morning. I'm trying not to sweat. And what I'm going to do is introduce you to what drummers do, show you some of the techniques and such, show you how that's applied, and then maybe while I'm doing my laundry, so I'll probably stop and put the stuff in the dryer after that, and then I will maybe turn on the stereo and just see what I can find on there, show you how it applies to songs that you've heard. The one thing I have to say though, and I really hate having to qualify things like this, but when you've lived in a car for 4 years, now I'm in my 5th year, and you're sitting in this seat all the time when you're not at work, where you're also sitting in a chair, I have absolutely no circulation in my legs, which means I have no circulation in my body. That's one reason I'm going to die a whole lot younger because of this experience. And because of that, because of the malnutrition, because of everything I've been through, the fact that I have to play upwards on a steering wheel like this, which is tantamount to playing upwards on a wall. When you play drums, you benefit so much from gravity assist. If I let go of this stick, it falls down and it bounces. Okay, but I'm playing upward. It doesn't fall down. If I let go of it the way I would here, it goes like this. So my technique, after I played for 40 years, and then I've had the last 4 or 5 years living in the car. For 40 years I was really, really good, and I worked really hard to get that good. In the last 4 years I've lost almost all of it. When you play up like this, the thing is when you're playing, you're strengthening certain muscles, in your wrist, in your hand, in your arm, in your forearms, and if you play drum set, there's a lot more to it, your legs and everything. For me, sitting in this car where I atrophy, but then I'm playing drums like this all the time upwards, that trains different muscles. It trains the wrong muscles. And the problem is, nothing can compensate for the fact that I do not get the gravity assist when I play upward like this, instead of like this, as you're supposed to play. So, I hate making excuses or apologizing for my playing, but I'm just not as good as I once was. And I probably never will be again because of this experience. It's yet another thing I've lost. Anyway, trying to be happy today. So, first things first, how do you hold the stick? Well, if you just grab the stick with your hand and you do it kind of down toward the end, you're naturally going to grab it in a certain way, probably with the thumb along the side. That's called a matched grip. Now, I don't know why, because it isn't matched to anything, but if you do it with your left hand the same way, it's matched. There you go, matched grip. There's another way of holding the sticks. you're pretty much always going to hold, assuming that you're right-handed, you're always going to hold your right hand like this. You know, it lets you do whatever you want by snapping your wrist and then controlling the rebound of it with your hand and its muscles. With the left hand, though, you can do something else. It's called traditional grip, and it's where you hold it on the underside, and there's a certain way of holding it here that you can kind of see how the fingers go. And then you so that's called traditional grip, and it goes back to you know, in the Revolutionary War, if you've seen those videos of, you know, Yankee Doodle Dandy and everything. Back then when they were marching, and they would do drums to keep the beat for the army's marching. You know, that kind of thing. Well, the drums back then, they didn't have, nowadays they have these carriers. They're hard fiberglass carriers that go over in hooks on your shoulders, and it keeps the drum nice and straight, flat in front of you. Back then they used a strap, like you would use on a guitar today. When you put a drum on a strap and you've only attached it at one place, the drum slopes like this on a big angle. So that's why you had the traditional grip. It was to get over that, the fact that your drum's on an angle, and then your right hand can come in normally. So, you know, that's the history of that. Nowadays, most people play match grip, especially on a drum set. Especially because you've just got so much movement you have to do. If you're doing a traditional grip, it's much harder. Your shoulder, everything about it moving around, especially off to your right, is very difficult. But if you do a match grip, it's relatively easy. You're just kind of twisting your abdomen. There are a lot of people, though, who will play, especially jazz players, and part of the reason is because this is really well tuned for doing subtle kind of, you know, jazzy stuff. And so Buddy Rich played traditional grip, and he certainly was no sloth. He was one of the best drummers that you've seen out there, if you remember him. He played traditional grip on a drum set. Most people, though, are going to play match grip. Alright, so how you hit the stick against the drum, like I said, you want to kind of snap with your wrist, and you're holding it in a fulcrum here, and you use these fingers to control how much pressure's on the stick. So when you snap it at the drum, it's going to rebound back, and a drum head is very elastic, so it really has a lot of rebound, depending on how tight you have the head. So when you hit it, it bounces back, and you use the rest of your hand to control how far back it goes. So if you want it to come back, because you want some, you know, high accented notes like this, you can do it. But if you want to do low stuff like that, you can also control it. And the same is true for your left hand, whether, you know, all of this applies whether it's traditional or match grip, and I'll probably switch it up. So that's the first thing. Once you do that, you have to learn to get your muscles loose. So drummers are going to do exercises to warm up, kind of like a piano player is going to have scales, you know, da 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 da. Well, drummers have things like that too. They're called rudiments. And when you're practicing warm-up exercises, you're probably going to do things like, it's called 8 on a hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And then you speed it up, you know, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And eventually you get to wherever you want to go with it. That wasn't very smooth. And you can get cooking too. Alright, you can do things like that. That's called single sticking. Here, well, let's try to be easy on the terminology. Alright, but basically you're single sticking. You're hitting with one stick, one hit per hit. Alright. The next thing you want to do after you've warmed up and you've gotten used to this, and notice what I'm doing. I'm going right, left, right, left, right, left. I might start on the left and go left, right, left, right, left, right, but regardless, I'm alternating. I'm going from one hand to the other, back and forth. That's called alternate sticking, because you're alternating. And if you do something like if you speed it up to where you're doing a drum roll, alternate sticking, it has a certain sound to it. That's It's called a single stroke drum roll because you're just one stroke per hand, da, 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 as fast as you can go. Alright, so the next thing you want to learn is accents. So instead of just going tap, 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 you're going to accent some of those. So if I'm counting out, 8th or 16th notes, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, if I want to accent the first note of each of those four groups of 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, etc. And you can change it up. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 3, 4, 1. So, 1, 2, 0, 1, 2, 0, 1, 2, 0, 3, 4, 4, 1. So you can accent. Accenting is very important because it's what gives emphasis to things. If you've ever listened to an orchestra, there'll be wah, 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 bam, right? That's called an orchestra hit, and it's an accent. And the purpose of it, obviously, is to give emphasis. Well, since drummers keep the beat and they keep the time, it's important that they're able to give emphasis. Accenting is one way to do it. Another way you can do it is to hit with both sticks at the same time. It's called a double stop. And you'll never hit at exactly the same time. It'll always be just a microsecond off on one of them. So it has a bit of a thick sound. If you hit an elastic surface like a snare drum or a drum at exactly the same time, if you look at how the standing wave generates, it's probably going to bounce the sticks back so hard that it might, fly out of your hands or put your eye out or something. So it's a good thing that you don't tend to hit at exactly the same time. But that's called a double stop. And it may not sound like much, but you're going to see it's incredibly useful. When you put all these things together is when they become useful. The next thing is what's called a diddle. A diddle is where you're hitting with one hand. Instead of alternating right, left, right, left, right, left, you hit the same hand twice in a row. So dot, 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 dot. Your diddle, diddle, that's where it comes from. Now that may not sound like much either, but it opens up a whole world of things that you can do. So if you're doing exercises for that, it depends how you do it, but you can just alternate right, right, left, left, right, right, left, left, right, right, left, left. And that technically isn't really so much of a diddle. It's more of a single sticking, but doing two of them, because I have full control over each one. But when you get it bouncing like that, that's a diddle. Da 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 da. I never could sing it the way some drummers can. One of the things you can do, remember the single stroke roll, when you just go as fast as you can alternating your sticking? Well, if you notice what happens if I'm doing this, but I'm going to switch to doing diddles. I'm going to do a drum roll going da 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 da, right, 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 left, left, right, right, left, left, instead of right, left, right, left, right. I'm going to switch to it while I'm doing this drum roll, and watch how my hands, if you can see my wrist, watch how my wrist suddenly starts moving at half speed. Then I go back to single stroke and look at what it's doing. It's really hard to play up here. So my wrist goes to half speed, and one of the consequences of that is that it takes a lot of the fatigue out of my wrist. Because when you're doing this, you can only do it for so long before you just wear yourself out in the muscles. And if you did that all the time, you'd probably get carpal tunnel and all that. So that's another benefit of that. But it also has a different sound to it. It has a different vibe. A single stroke is going to have these two sounds, and they're slightly different because your sticks, if you look at them with a microscope, they have different curves. They have little flat spots, little pits in the wood. The surface also, in many cases, in this case, it's incredibly uneven. I mean, you have all these striations and things in the rubber on the steering wheel. On a drum head, at least, it's nice and smooth. It sounds a lot more consistent than it does on this thing. But when you're hitting with a stick that has, the sticks are fundamentally different at the microscopic level, and you hit these surfaces, they have a different sound to them, even though I'm hitting tat, tat, but they sound different. So if I alternate, it sounds like you're kind of going da 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 da. You hear how, to me, the right hand sounds like a bit lower pitch, and it's probably because of where I'm hitting and the angle I'm hitting at. Well, if you do diddles, you're going to get more of a da 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 da. It gives motion to it. So you hear how that just kind of sounds different? And you can also go up to triples if you want. 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2 3. So da 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 has a different kind of motion to it. And on the steering wheel in particular, it really sounds different. On a drum head, it's not quite as pronounced, again, because it's consistent. But that opens up a whole new world, especially when you get on a drum set. The ability to use one hand to hit two notes at once opens up all kinds of things, and I'll show you that as we move along here. Let's see, what would be probably the next thing? I would say grace notes. Okay, so when you're hitting, I'm hitting these things, and whether I hit them loud like this, really wide open, or if I come in and I'm just kind of just doing the light tapping. Either way, it's pretty consistent, right? But let's say I'm doing this, and then I want to throw in a light note here. Can you see what my left hand's doing? Can you hear what my left hand's doing? Very light. It doesn't sound like much, but that's very different than and notice I'm not really accenting the right hand. I'm not going like this. I'm just hitting it normally. I'm just coming up pretty high with it. That's more or less a grace note. A grace note is just a very light tap on the drum. Sometimes it's so light you can even barely tell it's being done. But it has a consequence, because if you hit it immediately before, let's say I do a grace note immediately before I hit with this stick, you get something called a flam. So instead of a bam, you get a flam. Drummers have strange names for their rudiments and their techniques. And that's kind of what it sounds like. That's a flam. And if you listen carefully, you're going to hear this ever so slight little tap before the main attack. Okay? And now, so if I'm doing some kind of triplet thing, like da 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 da, just alternating sticking, if I put a flam on 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2 3, if I do a flam instead, it's going to be da ga. And you can hear how it's thicker there. So now look what each hand is doing if I tap over here. Let me try it this way. Okay, so those da, 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 those are basically grace notes. You can also start it off with what's called a rough, which is instead of a flam, instead of a grace note before hitting the main attack, you do a quick diddle. So like instead of you go it's really hard on this wheel. Then when you put all these things together, you start getting some really cool stuff, you know. And those are the kind of rudiments that you would learn to play, just like a pianist would learn to play, you know, all the scales and the modes and everything. Just like a pianist has to learn how to move their fingers, you know, 1 2 3, bring the thumb under, over for the rest, that kind of thing. Drummers have to learn techniques like how to hold the sticks, how to hit it, get the attack, how to control the rebound, things like that. When you get to a drum set, it becomes three-dimensional because you have so much else to do, and you've got to bring in your feet. So with that, you know, you can start bringing in, you can start creating all kinds of things by mixing those together. So if I do the flam thing on 16th notes, on like 1 and 3, you know, well, how do you? Instead of I do. You can hear how much thicker it is, how much fuller sounding it is. Well, if you have a cymbal, and I don't have a cymbal, I have a fan that isn't really blowing any air, but it's a little different sounding. I wish I had something that sounded like a cymbal in here. I really don't. That won't break. But you know, if you're doing something like that on both surfaces, you get more like that kind of thing. And there's a whole bunch of variations. You know, Swiss triplets, where you're doing that with triplets instead. That kind of thing. But when you're over here on a cymbal and you're doing this, you know, because you're getting the you know, you can see how on a drum set you're going to start fleshing out some parts that sound a lot more complicated than they are. But in the end, what they are is people have learned how to do this kind of stuff. And then you just do it on different drums. And it sounds like you're doing something really amazing and complicated, but you're just moving your hands around to different surfaces while you do it. Nothing to it. It's the same way if you learn a scale. If you learn that, you know, 1, 2, 3, bring the thumb under on a C major. It's basically the same for all the major scales. So if you go up to a D, you go to D, and yeah, you have to hit a couple black keys, but it's basically the same thing. 1, 2, 3, bring your thumb under. You know, it's the same thing. But it looks impressive because now you're throwing in the black keys. Well, I'm throwing in a cymbal instead, or a cowbell, or something like that. So, you know, in my background, you know, I have marching band, drum and bugle corps, things like that, and then drum set, of course. They're different things, but what really helped me to learn drums, a drum set, was when I learned my rudiments from drum corps, which unfortunately I had already been playing about, I don't know, 16, 17, 18 years when I joined drum corps, so I kind of learned to play wrong in the beginning. But if you take all this stuff together, you know, the role of a drummer, and I'm going to kind of focus on drum set at this point. The role of a drummer is to keep the beat, to be the timepiece for the band. However, in most cases, the bass player, you know, bass guitar, boom, 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 boom. The bass player and the drummer play very tight together. Now, they may play different things, but they stick together like glue, somehow. Because when you put the two together, they're called the rhythm section. They lay down the rhythm. You know, music has 3 parts. There's melody, da 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 da. There's harmony, where you have more than one note at a time, and they may shift in relation to each other, and they sound good together. Because some notes, when you hear the two together, they sound horrifying. It's called cacophony, and you don't want that. So harmonizing is a difficult thing because you have to make sure you don't hit those notes that don't belong together, or it'll sound horrible. And then the third part of music is rhythm, which is what the drummer is responsible for, and in many ways the bass player is responsible for as well. And it can be any instrument. You can have rhythm guitar, rhythm keyboards, that kind of thing. In theory, you can have a rhythm singer, you know. But for what it's worth, it's the drummer. And as the old joke goes, you know, they say, well, how do you know there's a drummer at the door? And it's like, well, the knocking speeds up. Right, so as a drummer, you don't want to speed up. While you're playing through a song, you're da 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 da, boom 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 boom. You don't want to speed it up to boom 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 boom, and then the singer's like, and the guitarist is like, I can't keep up. You don't want to do that. All right, and I'm pretty guilty of it, to be honest. But the way I get around that is I hook up with bands that like that kind of thing. I've always played in power trios because I like the idea of each musician being very responsible for their part. And in a power trio, you each have to cover your parts, or it's going to fall apart. It's going to sound terrible. So there's a lot of responsibility with that. The bigger your band, the more other people can cover for your mistakes or your lack of skill or whatever. So a trio really has to. They all have to be on, the guitar player, the bass player, and the drummer, and then of course someone's probably singing as well. But along those lines, I see a lot of people say, well, I don't understand how drummers can sing while they're playing. I mean, look at all the stuff they're doing. They're just wailing all over the place, moving around. I mean, you think if nothing else, they'd just be out of breath. how can they sing at the same time? And at least in my experience, it's you. For one thing, a lot of what you're doing is based off of rudiments that are just absolutely second nature. I don't really have to think a whole lot about doing this. I just do it. In fact, if I think about it, I'm probably going to choke. I'm probably going to fall apart because I don't need to analyze it. It's just muscle memory at this point. If I want to do, I should be able to talk to you while I'm doing it. Of course, not having good luck here, but for the most part. But if I'm playing a song that I've been practicing over and over and over, I'm going to know it note for note. I'm not really going to think about it, okay? I just play the drums. I don't even think twice about it. I spend my attention on looking for pretty girls in the audience and things like that. You know, that's what you're supposed to do when you're a drummer. But if I'm singing in a band, I will, which I can't do either because this situation has completely destroyed my voice, and that's gone forever. It's just gone. My vocal cords are actually physically damaged. The cold, the heat, the just horrific air I've breathed for 4 years, I'll never sing again. So it has taken that away from me for eternity. But when I did play drums and I would sing, I didn't do much lead because I didn't have that great a voice to begin with, but I was very good at backup and harmonies. And again, I'm just so used to the drum parts, you know, I just know, da 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 da. Oh yeah, ba, 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 ba. You know, I focus on the singing because I want the singing to be really good. And if I don't know the drum parts, it can fall all apart. You're right. A drummer just everything falls apart if there isn't at least one of those two things that you can do without thinking about it. And for a drummer, it's obviously going to be the drums that they can do without thinking about. So you think about the singing, at least for me. Let's see, what else can we do here? So, I mean, those are the basics of it. And as you watch somebody, I guess I should say your feet. On a drum set, you know, the way a drum set is typically set up, you're going to have a bass drum, that big one that faces you, the head faces you. Because it's big, it has a lower sound, so it's called the bass drum. And this is the best I can give you for a bass drum, is me trying to tap my foot on this curved floor. Sorry. Alright. Then you have kind of below to your left, almost in your lap, there's usually about a 14-inch drum called a snare drum. It has these little wires on the bottom. So when you hit the top, it causes those bottom ones to vibrate, and it gives this pss, pss, pss kind of sound. Whereas most drums have a bong, 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 bong. But that one, because it has the snares on the bottom, it goes pff. So you can go bong, 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 pff. So when you're doing what's called a ride, you're grooving, you're just keeping the beat. This is the snare. Cymbal. Boom, 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 boom. The snare. And that's how you get these different sounds. And that's just what you expect to hear, is some variation on. And whether it's, you know, some triplet waltz feel, that doesn't matter. The toms, again, are just regular drum heads, so they just go boom, 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 boom. Normally you're going to have a couple up here, one or two up above you. Depends on who you are, but, you know, usually something like 10 and 12 inch or 12 and 14 inch, or no, I'm sorry. It kind of depends. It really depends. I had a couple small toms up. I always kept them off to the side for emphasis. But it's probably going to be like 10, 12 inch. And then they have toms on the floor, the big ones that have the triangular bases. And they're just the same as the ones up above. They're just much bigger, but they're not as big as the bass drum. So as you go around, it goes, the snare's probably the highest pitched. And then the highest tom, bong, bong, bong. And you might have a second floor tom, bong, and then the bass drum, boom. So, boom, 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 and you get that kind of thing going. And I have 4 people walking 6 feet in front of my car. I'll let you guess whether they were staring with rubbernecks or not. Not a single place I can go in this entire state of Minnesota where I can just be alone long enough to make a video. Anyhow, this is a happy video. So, The other thing you have are cymbals. Off to your left, to the left of the snare drum, are two cymbals that they clamp together. They're you know, the cymbals have a little bell on them. They're kind of an arch, like a UFO shape. If you take one and you flip it upside down and put them together, they're flat. So they go and you use your left foot with a pedal that you push the pedal to make that thing rise and fall. So the cymbal goes but also, as you're playing it, if you use your foot to bring them down so that they're closed together, it goes and then as you lift up your foot, you get that kind of thing. Or you can just open it up and get a real open sound to it. That's called a hi-hat. So that's what your 2 feet are doing down there. You're working the bass drum and you're working the hi-hat. And if you play 2 bass drums, you're going to have a second pedal for the bass drum, and you have to actually move your left leg from one pedal to the other. So when you're playing hi-hat, you have it on the hi-hat pedal. And then you scoot your left foot over to the pedal next to it to get the double bass, which is going to be impossible to do in a car, but you know, that kind of thing. Alright, and I never was that great at double bass anyway. So next you have 2 particular types of cymbals. One is called a ride cymbal, the other one's called a crash. The ride cymbal are going to be generally the larger ones. They're about, you know, 18 to 22 inches in most cases in diameter. And they're for riding, literally. When you hear a song and you hear someone just going, you know, ding, 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 ding. That's a ride cymbal. It's to get the groove going. It's not for emphasis. It's just, it's something smooth to get you going. I can never think of examples, but you know, Pink Floyd. Pink Floyd's actually a very slow band if you think about it. They're very slow music. The drummer's usually just overhead the albatross hangs motionless upon the air. You know, you just got that cymbal going, but it's not a hi-hat. You can have a hi-hat if you want, but generally if you're going faster you tend to use the hi-hat, but you might switch back and forth because they have such different sounds. As you go from the chorus to the bridge and different parts of a song, you'll switch from the hi-hat to the cymbal because it opens up as you go into the chorus. If you're doing a hi-hat thing, you know, you know, whatever the chorus is, switching to the ride cymbal gives it a different feel to the song, even though you're basically doing the same thing. The crash cymbal is exactly what you'd expect. It's a smaller cymbal. They have things called splash cymbals that can be like 6 inches, 8 inches, 10 inches, all the way up to pretty big crash cymbals, you know, I don't know, 16 inches probably, 14 and 16 inch are probably typical. But there's all kinds of, and there's a whole bunch of other types of cymbals, china cymbals, gongs, you know, there's a whole bunch, but those are the basic ones, the hi-hat, the ride cymbal, the crash. Normally, and the hat's almost always going to be on your left, unless you're left-handed or something, and you have to cross your hand over to play it because your snare's down below. So when you see a drummer with their arms crossed, they're not just trying to look cool, that's the way you have to play it, unless you switch out. But if you're right-handed, since you're riding on the hi-hat, you're doing most of your technique on there, you got to have your strong hand over there. That's why you cross over. So you got the hi-hat on the snare. Snare's just on 2 and 4. The hi-hat is sitting here doing the 8th notes. Okay. Now, the ride cymbal is generally over to your right because when you want to change it, you don't want to change from here up to there. That's an awkward position. You want to change over to here. And notice how that opens up my body. My body opens up. I'm not have my arms crossed like some rapper anymore when I'm doing a hi-hat thing. I'm opening up, and that has consequences in terms of your posture and what it does with your abdominal muscles and things. And that opens up what you can do on the drum set. The crash cymbal is generally the first, if you only have one, it's generally going to be to your left and up. So if you're on the hi-hat, you can reach up and ksh. If you're on the ride cymbal, you can reach over and ksh. But because of diddles, you can also be riding over here and you can hit with the left hand, hit the crash cymbal. And you can go, if you have more crash cymbals, you can hit with the left, then with the right. You know, and I'll show you how this happens. See, one of the things about diddles and triples, the ability to do 2 at a time. or 3. The ability to do that, what it does is when you're doing a drum run, if you're going around the toms, you know, you're going to single stick it, right, left, 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 right, left. Now notice I ended on left. That means my right hand is free at that point. As I'm hitting that very last note with the left, I can move my right hand where it needs to go. If I'm going to go to the ride cymbal, it moves there at the same time I hit this note. If I want to hit a crash, as I'm hitting this note, my right hand moves up to the crash. It gives me time for the motion. Okay, but what if I want to do something else? What if I want to lead with my left? Okay, so let's say that the part I'm playing ends on my right hand. So it just ended on the right because I started with my left. I led with the left. Left, right, 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 left, right. Okay, look where my sticks are. My left hand is up in the air because it just hit. It came up as I hit that last one with the right. How am I supposed to get to the crash cymbal? I mean it's going to be, you know, that's what you're going to get. Okay, what if I want to, you know, I hit this, it bounces up, I hit this, and then I want to hit the ride cymbal with my right hand to start a groove. Well, I just hit this drum here. I have to go from here all the way over to that cymbal just like that. And if it's a fast song, you could be talking about something as quick as this. I mean, there's no way to do that. The way you get around it is called stick control. You control which stick you're going to end with whenever you do some kind of a technique. So if you're coming around doing a run, you know, okay, now I just ended on the right. If I do that, I've got to be prepared that my left is going to do something over here. I'm not going to go straight somewhere with my right hand. But if I notice how at the end I ended with 2 lefts. By doing that, I can, as I'm hitting that diddle, which is what it is, as I hit the 2 lefts, I can move my right hand where it needs to go. So that's why those are so important. They free up your ability to maneuver around a drum set. And as you add a bunch of drums and cowbells and all these different cymbals, 2 bass drums, having that kind of stick control is absolutely crucial to getting things done. And you have to get to the point where you don't think twice about it. When I just did that and I switched from ending on my right to ending on my left while playing the same thing, I did not think about it. I just knew what I wanted to do and I did it because I've trained myself. If I had thought about it, if I'd focused my concentration on it, I probably would have screwed that up royally. In fact, let me try it. See, what was that? Well, I didn't screw it up royally, but it was kind of flubbed at the end. It wasn't smooth time. You don't want to think about it. You've got to build the muscle memory. You've got to just be able to do it. And a concert pianist, if you tell them to play a certain scale or something, they're just going to sit down and, oh, really? And they're just going to do it. Because they've done it thousands of times and they're so used to it, they don't think about it. It's the same way with drummers. Alright? And then there's other things you can do too. You know, if you want to, if you're, you know, you can do all, I can't do it in the car, but if you're going to do stick spins and things, well, what if you're going to do a stick spin? Okay, I'm coming around here and I want to do this stick spin as I go over to the cymbal. Well, if I'm going to do that, I can't be going like that. Obviously, I've got to end with my left. I might even have to end with 3 on the left to give myself enough time to do the stick spin and move over to the drum. Or if I'm doing it with the left hand as well. You know, so any of those kinds of visual things you have to take into consideration with your sticking as well. Those are what allow you to do those things. But you're not concentrating on it. That's what a drummer practices. They practice these techniques so that they become second nature, and then they focus on coming up with a part that sounds good with the song. Alright? And I'm trying to think if I'm forgetting anything else before I go to the music here, although I think I have to go put my laundry in the dryer first. Tell you what, I'm going to do that. I'm going to put my laundry in the dryer and see if I can think of anything else I have to do before I turn on the radio to let you hear how this works with music, alright? Be right back. Okay, I'm back, and I'm glad I thought about that when I went in to put my laundry in the dryer, because I came up with actually several different things to talk about that are different than technique per se. So I'm going to end this video now, actually, and I'm going to put a part 2. So that you can choose whether you want to watch both parts or not, or you can conveniently watch them at different times. Alright, so I appreciate you watching this. I hope this video, for those of you who stop here, I hope you learned something about, to help you appreciate what drummers do, and that when you watch them, you will pay attention more to what they're doing and realize that, again, they're not all just animal, you know, chained to their drummer's throne so they don't get away and hurt anybody. And speaking of hurting people, one last thing is I'm notorious for throwing sticks into the crowd. Not intentionally either. While I'm playing, I'll just, whoa, my stick will go flying. Maybe I'll show you a video. I have one video of me doing that. Rather embarrassing, but it's what you do with it. In that video, if I do show it somewhere, when you see the stick fly, notice though that even though the stick goes flying into the audience and puts out somebody's eye, I just keep drumming because I have more sticks down there in a bag, and I just grab another stick and keep going. If you didn't see it, you would never know that it happened. And that's what you have to do as a drummer. Just like if you're a guitar player and your string breaks, go on YouTube and search on Stevie Ray Vaughan string break, where he was at a concert and his string broke and he had to completely rechange the way he was playing everything. He had to change where he was playing on the guitar until he got that thing, and then he changed the guitar while he was playing. Just absolutely amazing. That's a professional. Those of you who think that rock and roll doesn't have professionalism, you're watching the wrong bands. Anyway, I hope this was interesting for those of you who stop here. Thank you so much for watching, and I do hope you'll come back for part 2. It's going to be just as good. Thanks.